Okay, yo, how's it going? To back in the video, and today I'm going to be talking about why the New Orleans Pelicans, in my opinion, could be sleeping giants going into the next season. Now, a lot of people have been talking about the Pelicans recently, especially after Media Day, about Zion looking very fit and healthy, and all that's great, but that's really not what this video is about. I am from New Orleans, so I am a Pelicans fan, but the reason I'm making this video is because I don't think a lot of people are getting into the nitty-gritty of this roster, and I don't think they really know how good they can be. And I'm going to be getting into pretty much why I think the Pelicans could be very, very good going into this season, and even better than a lot of people are saying, due to the little nitty-gritty stuff that maybe if you're not a fan of this team, you just wouldn't know. So I do want to get into all that in this video, and that does sound interesting to you. Please stick around and watch the whole thing through. Hit the like button, subscribe button, it would mean the absolute word to me. But without further ado, without running on too much, let's get right into this video. Alright, so the first thing I really want to get into for this video is going to be their all-around young core and why it is different from a lot of people's in the NBA. Because young core is probably one of the most overused statements in the entire NBA. Everybody says it. Everybody says their team has a very good young core and all that, because every team does have a quote-unquote young core, just a lot are better than others. And in my opinion, the Pelicans could potentially have one of the best in the entire NBA, because if you look at it from top to bottom, out of all their guys 25 years or younger, this is what they have. They have an all-star level player in Brandon Ingram, who's been a 25 point per game scorer for the past few years now, and has just been very, very impressive. Last year, they got a second-round player in Herb Jones. Herb Jones is one of the best defenders already in his position, and he's only going into year 2, and he is undoubtedly one of the best defenders in the entire NBA right now. Then they have Zion Williamson coming back, and Zion, when he plays, we've already seen him play once. He's extremely dominant. He's a superstar level player and just one of the best players in the entire NBA when he is healthy. Jose Alvarado, he's a young bulldog. He does anything you need him to do. He can shoot, he can score, he can play defense, he can be a pest, he can do anything you want Jose to do, and he's just a perfect young guy to have on your team. They have Trey Murphy, last year's rookie, who, although I'm not extremely high on as a Pelicans fan, he is still usable. He's a good floor spacer. He needs to get a lot better on defense, and he did add muscle over this offseason, so that defense might be coming into play a little bit this season. But if he can become a solid defender, Trey Murphy is going to be a very solid player for them. Then they also have Jackson Hayes, who, although Jackson Hayes has not reached his potential to this point in his career, he has been a very average, solid role player for them, and he can really provide a spark off the bench when he is playing at his full energy level. Jackson Hayes had a really good stretch last year, and he's just a very good spark player to have on your bench. Then they have Kira Lewis Jr., who, although he did get injured last year, I think he tore his ACL and he missed the entire season. Before he went out, he was playing some of the best basketball of his career. He has elite speed, and he is a very, very fun guy to watch off the bench. Now, I don't know how much minutes he's going to get this year, but I do think that Kira Lewis could be a solid player as well, a solid role player as well, going into the future for this New Orleans Pelicans roster. And then the last guy rounding out this young core is going to be Dyson Daniels. Now, although I did mention him last, he is not the worst player in this young core, and although I am not very high on Dyson Daniels coming into the draft, I can see the intrigue with him. He's a very solid two-way player. He has a lot of work when it comes to ball handle and really just all thing offense. He has a lot to work on when it comes to the offensive end, and he is a solid defender. Now, he does lack elite length or athleticism that can make him an elite defender, but I do think he can be a solid defender that maybe can get you around 8 points per game if he's given enough minutes. Now, I don't know how many minutes he's going to actually be able to get with this Pelicans roster, but he should be very, very solid if he does get minutes. Now, I don't think he'll ever be a star or anything, but he could once again fall into that kind of really nice role player, and he just fits the whole scheme. He plays defense, he works hard, he fits what the Pelicans wanted in a young guy, and that's very nice. And with all those players being under 25 years old, and Brandon Ingram being the oldest of all of them, that is very exciting. Like, you have at least 7 more years of all these players playing at a very solid level, playing together, building chemistry, and just getting better and better. And a lot of their best guys like Zion and Brandon Ingram, and even Herb Jones, you can put in that level at this point, are all but 3 or 4 years away from hitting their prime, which is very exciting to think about. And they can only get better as they start growing older and older and getting better and more experienced in the league going forward. And in my opinion, what makes this young core so much different than a lot of other young cores in the NBA is the talent level that they're already at. Because, like, really look at what they have right now on their young core and from a talent standpoint. If you start with Brandon Ingram, he is a top 10 small forward at only 25 years old. He's one of the most unguardable players. He's made an all-star team. He's just one of the best offensive players in the entire NBA. He's pretty much like a poor man's KD, because you just cannot guard any fadeaways he does. He has extreme length, and it's just definitely, in my opinion, a top 10 small forward, at least top 15 small forward in the entire NBA. And then you have Zion Williamson. When he is healthy, healthy, is probably a top 15 player in the entire NBA. He's a superstar level player, and if he can stay healthy, he can very much this year break into the top 10, maybe even top 7, top 8 players in the entire NBA. So I think for sure Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, both are elite players in their position. And if you look at power forward, Zion's probably top 5 in that entire position already when he is fully healthy. So that is two very high level players already in your young core. And then you look at someone like Herb Jones, who's probably a top 5 defender in the entire NBA already. Herb Jones was getting all defensive team recognition, and he made it on an all rookie team, and he probably should have made all rookie first team. That's just how good of a level of a defender Herb Jones is already at. So that is just 3 players in their young core, all of which are elite in what they do. Brandon Ingram, like I said, top 10, maybe top 15 offensive small forward in the entire NBA. In my opinion, he's a top 10 small forward in the entire NBA. And when it comes to offense purely, he's probably a top 5 player. Not top 5 player, but he's very high up there when it comes to just purely offense in the entire NBA. You have Zion, who potential to be a top 5 player MVP candidate is probably his potential, and he's just one of the most dominant players in the entire NBA. And then Herb Jones, one of the best defenders already in the entire NBA, and he's only going into year 2, and that's already way better than you can really say for pretty much anyone else's young core that they have. And then even some of the lesser known guys like Jose Alvarado, in his first playoff series, he went against a Hall of Fame point guard in Chris Paul, one of the best to ever do it, and he greatly disrupted Chris Paul. He was a huge reason why that series went to a 6-game series, and Jose just played out of his mind in the playoffs, and to be able to guard someone like Chris Paul when you're an undrafted rookie is extremely exciting. I think he forced like 2 10-second violations in the backcourt. He stole it from behind. He's just a pest, and he was able to greatly disrupt a Hall of Fame point guard like Chris Paul, which is extremely impressive. And then you have Trey Murphy, who, like I said, lesser known guy, but he is still a very good 3-point shooter. He's a sniper from the 3-point line, and that's going to be a great piece to put around Zion. So that's really very interesting, because a lot of young cores do not have the talent that this young core has. A lot of them still have to develop, and although yes, the Pelicans young core is still developing, to say that Zion and Brandon Ingram aren't probably one of the best duos in the entire NBA at this point is going to be very hard pressed to find someone better. Now yes, there are better duos, but to find a under 25-year-old duo better than Brandon Ingram and Zion is maybe impossible if you look at the entire NBA, and I think their future is extremely bright just from their potential, from where they're already at, how talented they are, and just how many years they have together left, as they just extended Zion, they extended Brandon Ingram a few years ago, they extended Jose Alvarado, Herb Jones is still on his rookie contract, and same with Trey Murphy. So I think for sure this young core is going to have tons and tons of years together going forward, and they're just going to grow, get better chemistry, and just keep getting better and better as years go on. And now even if you zoom out a little bit from just their young core and you look at their entire roster as a whole, their entire roster is also very solid, because look at their entire starting lineup when they are healthy. At point guard, they have CJ McCollum, a top 10 player in my opinion from that point guard position. He's an absolute bucket, he's a great leader, and just a great veteran presence to have on your team, and CJ McCollum played very well for them last year, and I just think for sure you can't argue it. He's probably a top 10 point guard. At minimum, he's a top 15 point guard. And then at shooting guard, you have Brandon Ingram, who, like I said earlier, is a top 10 shooting guard in the entire NBA and one of the best offensive talents that you're going to find across the league. And then at small forward, they have Herb Jones, who although is not top 10, top 15 small forwards, he is an elite defender and is probably a top 1 or 2 defenders in the entire NBA at this point from a perimeter perspective. And at only a year 2 guy, to have someone that good who's still giving you around 10 points per game is extremely valuable to be your 5th best player in your starting lineup. And then at your power forward, you have Zion Williamson, and when he is fully healthy, he could be a top 5 power forward in the entire NBA, one of the most dominant players in the entire NBA, and there's just no limit to how high of a ceiling Zion Williamson has if he can stay healthy. And then at center, they have Jonas Valanciunas, an extremely underrated center, who in my opinion is a top 10 center, and last year averaged around 20 points per game. He was able to spread the floor a little bit and was just a very solid player that wasn't talked about enough across the league. So if you look at their starting 5, 4 out of 5 of those spots have a very good player who who's potentially a top 10 player in that position. And then at the 5th position, they have an elite defender, which is extremely hard to find. And there's almost no teams that you can look from top to bottom in their starting lineup and say that there's a top 10 player in about 4 out of 5 of those spots. And in the one spot that is not a top 10 player, it is an extremely young guy who is one of the best defenders in the NBA. Like, that is almost as good of a combination of starting 5 players you can have in the entire NBA. That's what you strive for, and that is exactly what the New Orleans Pelicans have. And then if you even zoom out just a little bit more and you look at the bench that the Pelicans are going to have and the depth they're going to be able to play with, they have a lot of it, because they already have players like I've mentioned earlier, like Jose Alvarado, who's going to be a young bull. They have Trey Murphy, who's a sniper from the 3-point line. They have all the young guys that are going to be able to play good off of the bench. But even if some of the veterans that they have people like Larry Nance Jr., who played very good for the Pelicans after he came back from his injury and just looked very solid and just signed a 2-year extension with the Pelicans to stay. They have Willy Hernangomez, who just won Euro Cup MVP overseas and is a great leader, just a great player to have on your team. They wouldn't even trade him last year because of how much he meant to the locker room, and Willy Hernangomez is a very solid player off the bench. And then you had the complete opposite of Jose Alvarado and Devontae Graham. Devontae Graham, although some Pelicans fans hate him, some Pelicans fans love him, Devontae Graham is a very good spark to have off your bench. If you need offense, you can put Devontae Graham in there, and he can go out and give you about 8 points in about 30 seconds if he is on fire. He's actually a very clutch shooter as well. He had 2 game-winning buzzer beaters last year for the Pelicans. One of them was a 3/4 court heave against the Thunder, and it was just very impressive. And Devontae Graham, being one of the last guys off your bench, is a very good place to be in if you're an NBA roster. So I just think if you look at the young core, to the whole roster, to the depth that they have, this Pelicans team has all of the makings of a very good dark horse contending level team, and I think they're going to have a very solid season. But unfortunately, guys, that's going to be for Zero. So comment below. Do you agree with me? Do you think that the Pelicans have potential to be a dark horse contender? How good do you think they're going to be? How many wins do you think they're going to have? Comment all that in the comment section below. It means the absolute word to me. I like responding to y'all. I like talking to y'all in the comments. So please comment if you have any thoughts about this video. And if you did like the video point, hit the like button and subscribe button. It means the absolute word to me. And I hope you had a blessed day, because I have a blessed day. So you need a blessed day. All glory to God. See you in the next video. Goodbye. Boo. Blah, blah.